Our final speaker tonight is Daniel Burka, a San Francisco-based product designer and entrepreneur. He's currently a design partner at GV, the venture capital arm of Alphabet. Please welcome Daniel Burka.
So I was thinking, if I had 20 minutes to stand up in front of a bunch of designers and entrepreneurs, you know, like what's on my mind lately that I think is really important for you guys to know. And to me, one of the big issues I think that we're facing is around design leadership at startups. So I'm going to talk specifically to anybody in the audience who aspires to be a leader at a startup. So either, you know, really early stage at a startup or someone who's kind of graduating into that role of being a leader. I have a really unique perspective on the design industry. So I worked in startups for a while, like he was saying, and but now I work at GV, which is Alphabet's venture capital arm. So basically means Alphabet gives us, Alphabet's Google, if anybody's wondering, Alphabet gives us about $450 million per year, and we take that money and invest it in a huge range of startups. So we invest in this giant range of companies, about 320 odd companies at this point. Brands you've heard of, you know, Medium, Slack, Nest, those kinds of companies, as well as a huge number of companies you might not have heard of. We do about 40% of our investing in life sciences, so we invest in Flatiron Health, it's like a big data oncology company, and last week I was working with a company in New York called Quartet that is increasing people's access to healthcare. And so I get to see what design teams kind of prioritize and how design teams work at a giant variety of companies. I was over in London. We started investing in Europe a couple of years ago. And when we started investing in Europe, one of my coworkers and I went over to London for about a week to talk to entrepreneurs there about design because we didn't want to take our suppositions of what worked in the Bay Area and assume that they would work in London. And we had this really interesting week. So I talked to about 20 entrepreneurs in a week, and basically it went like this. We'd go to a cafe. I drank a shitload of coffee that week. We'd go to a cafe, we'd sit down with an entrepreneur, and the very first question we'd ask is, so when you think about design, what do you think of? And immediately the entrepreneur almost always looked a little bit nervous, and they get defensive. If any of you guys have ever done user research and you're sitting across from somebody, and they'll be sitting across from you and you see them, they cross their arms and they sit back a little bit, you know, it's this defensive pose. You see this a lot when you were talking to the entrepreneurs. And they talk, first of all, about kind of surface level design. They'd be like, oh, brand is really, really important. And you're like, okay, you know, that's interesting. You know, it's not too surprising. London has a deep history of brand design, and there's a lot of design schools in London that teach brand. And then they might talk about look and feel next. They were like, oh, it's really important to us to have a great look and feel. You know, all of our competitors, you know, look like crap, and we'll really stand out if the product looks good. You know, sure. And then the next thing they talk about is that maybe the product should be intuitive. And that's about as deep as they get. So they kind of just below the surface, right? And it was really interesting that the next question we'd ask is, okay, so what keeps you up at night as an entrepreneur? And you see them visibly relax, much more confident. You know, we're not testing them anymore. And they'd be like, oh God, yeah, we're really worried about fundraising. We're worried about moving into new markets. You know, we're really popular in Britain, but moving into the rest of Europe or moving to America is you know, a huge hurdle for us, and we're worried about it. And then they talk about hiring and retaining talent. They talk about their finances as a business, you know, whether or not they were going to have enough runway. They talk about all these issues that weren't design, right? And so they had this idea that design does this one thing, but like the business is over here. And it was very, very concerning because I think, you know, designers have been arguing for a long time that we should have a seat at the table. And in many ways, now designers do. Jenny Arden in the movie you're about to watch, she'll say something about that she thinks that there's been a sea change and this has already happened. You know, design does have a seat at the table. We're already there. I think, especially in the Bay Area and New York, that's probably true. Designers have been invited to sit in major business meetings and have input. And from my experience of talking to quite a few designers, what happens commonly is that designers bring a discussion of design craft when they get to the chance to talk to leadership. So they'll talk about design consistency across the product. They'll talk about creating a design system that has, reusable components. They'll talk about typography and color and, all of these things that we as designers, care a lot about. And don't get me wrong, I think craft is incredibly important, and I really enjoy talking to you guys about craft. I enjoy sitting down with designers or going to design conferences, and we can talk about craft until we're blue in the face. That's great. But the problem is that when we talk about craft, when we prioritize the types of things that designers particularly care about, we have this problem like we were experiencing in London, where design is off doing design while everyone else is running the fucking business. And that leaves us out in the dark. And it leaves us often very frustrated because people don't listen to us. People care about their own problems. And if we can use design to help them solve those problems, we'll be so much more effective as designers and as, really as part of an organization. Just quit talking about what's important to us and listen to what's important to everyone else in your organization. They'll say all of these things that are important to them. If you can bring along and use your design skills to help them solve those problems, that's how you'll really earn your seat at the table. I don't think it's crazy. I think design has a unique set of skills to be incredibly effective within organizations. And I'm going to talk about a couple of things that I think I've seen designers do that are incredibly effective. You look everywhere across the company, and everybody has little inklings of ideas about what can make the company more successful. One of the biggest problems with inklings is that they're very malformed, right? And so really you're in an organization, all these little inklings of ideas are floating around, and people have a very hard time expressing them. And so when they talk about them with each other, what happens is, we discuss them verbally most of the time, maybe at a whiteboard where you're doing a little bit of sketching. And the biggest problem when you describe something verbally to everybody is that the thing I'm thinking in my head and the thing you're seeing are wildly different from each other. Keep in mind that these ideas are all over the place in a business. It might be, how do we attract more engineering talent to our business? It could be, why don't we attract female engineering talent to our business? This is the kind of thing that designers can step in, test, validate, and try new things. And we can be very, very effective in companies if you think of yourself as the person who leads that type of discussion and who finds the right solutions within the business. Go forth, be leaders, find ways to get involved in the business side of your business. And I think you'll find yourselves a lot more satisfied with being leaders at startups. Thank you so much.